Hello, this is Theo Cedar Jones, resuming my discourse on you sleeping fans of rock, the death, decline, destruction, and resurrection of rock and roll. So I thought I'd go over some of the symptoms of the malaise that rock has been in. I would say steady decline since 1980. I would say 1980 is the turning point, roughly speaking, where the last vestiges of truth in rock were wiped out and the torch was passed to the deceivers. But here's a symptom. So since 2000, rock profits are down 90%. So today, the profits of the rock industry are about 250 million, whereas they used to be 2.5 billion, supposedly. I am highly doubtful of all the labor statistics that pertain to the rock music industry, because nobody really has been watching the shop on behalf of musicians. I don't know very much about the quality of this information, but I don't really have a reason to doubt that actual profits in the rock music industry have collapsed. They're in catastrophic freefall. Symptom number 2 is we can't locate a successful original rock band from the Bay Area since the 90s. So we're 20 years out without a single contribution from the Bay Area in terms of another Green Day, in terms of another Primus, Metallica, Faith No More, let alone another Third Eye Blind or Smash Mouth or AFI. I mean, those are the last bands that made it big from the Bay Area. So the Bay Area has been a consistent producer. Every single generation of musicians since the 60s has been, we've had at least 5 hit-making bands from the Bay Area every generation, except for the last 20 years. So that's a significant, serious change in the cultural landscape. And if anybody were like, if this were the steel industry, or if this were the automotive industry, or the pharmaceutical industry, and these kind of, just those first two statistics I mentioned, or first 2 situational concerns here, that a major cultural market for rock and roll music is suddenly barren, doesn't produce new bands of any significance. Used to make the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane and Santana, and to say nothing of things like Huey Lewis or the Tubes, or, you know, there's so many, many, many examples we take for granted. Boz Scaggs. It's like we can't get arrested in the Bay Area. Rock music is, if you measure it by how many A-list original rock music songs have been produced in your region, how many A-list or world-class quality rock bands have come up in this new generation. It's a catastrophic collapse of the fundamental basis of rock and roll. If you can't produce new A-list songs and you can't produce new A-list bands in your region over multiple generations, what does that say? This is terrible. I mean, this is so terrible. It's like I've had resistance to doing this video blog. It cuts so close to my heart and to my entire adult life of work to have to talk about this stuff. It has to be talked about. Nobody's watching the shop of rock and roll except viperous, venomous, parasitic, vampiric, Illuminati handlers and mind control people. This is, it's going to take me a while to adumbrate the horror show. The fact that rock and roll has been subjected to every dirty trick the Illuminati has, the CIA has, because rock and roll is so threatening. It's not just entertainment. It's not just another consumer product, another fad or trend. So those are the first 2 things. Rock profits down 90% since 2000, and no successful bands from the Bay Area in let's say 3 generations. The situation of alcohol in the local club scene has just been like a permanent death grip on the neck of rock and roll. There's like this leech, this huge parasite that's like a lamprey eel that's 3 feet long, latched onto the neck of rock and roll, constantly sucking the lifeblood, which is youth. Youth is the lifeblood of rock. If you suck the youth out of the local rock scene, you effectively destroy it. So right now we are in a situation where, if you take the East Bay or the Bay Area at large, we are in a net decline of local rock clubs since my start in 1986. So there's been a net reduction in clubs that feature local bands. This is a very fundamental barometer or indicator of your local economic and cultural health, is how many clubs, let alone all ages clubs, that's another consideration. Any club at all. And of course, by club, I mean alcohol selling clubs that are 21 and over. The most gross, hideous, toxic violation of culture to prohibit the youth from gaining access to virtually all local bands. They cannot see local bands live in their own neighborhoods, in their own communities, in their own city, anywhere in the United States, because of alcohol laws, which are so draconian and so anti-constitutional that they say after the age of 18, for 3 more years, you don't have your constitutional right to drink alcohol, which I hate alcohol. But that is just plain egregious overreach by well-meaning legislators and hypocritical Puritans and hypocritical Christians who want to control alcohol consumption through legislation at the expense of local rock music everywhere in the country. It's like the perfect sick system to destroy rock music is alcohol, to make the business model of local rock music clubs based on alcohol sales, therefore discriminating against every human under the age of 21. This is the death dagger in the heart of rock and roll at all times. It's just one of them. And it's so sick. It disgusts me so much that I've been ramrodded into this hideous death culture of local rock clubs that are not only under the death grip of alcohol sales as their business model and the hideous prohibition against youth going to their own music scene, but for the most part, clubs are owned by the mafia, by the Illuminati, the Freemasons, the people in charge of your town. Nobody gets big in this town without going through the secret societies, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, whoever it is in Oakland that controls the Port of Oakland, that controls the Catholic Church in Oakland, that controls the Freemason Temple in Oakland, and who controls Jerry Brown. This is all part of this vast network of an ideology that is out to depopulate our planet and destroy beauty. It's the war against beauty, as Owen Benjamin says. And it's postmodernism in the terms that Jordan Peterson and Camille Paglia have described. So, God bless these people. They have made the commentaries that I'm building my commentary on, and it's heavy lifting, I will tell you. To account for the degree of toxicity and evil directed at rock and roll, to really account for that, which Lord knows Rolling Stone magazine won't do, those sellout, satanic fuckers. Oh, the only mouthpiece for rock left in the mainstream media, Spin magazine, it's like NPR. There's just one mouthpiece left to account for this vast, beautiful culture of rock and roll, this homegrown, all-American culture that, well, I'll tell you, if you want to know how rock and roll's been treated for real, just look at how we treat our children. Look how we treat our factory-farmed animals. So, Oakland, the East Bay, the Bay Area, like every other rock and roll market in this God-blessed country of ours, suffers from alcohol laws. Alcohol is the death of rock, and 10% of the given population at any time. So obviously the solution is alcohol-free rock and roll. Obviously the solution is to give other forms of funding to the rock business model so it's not dependent to whore itself out to alcohol as its subsistence and fuck the youth. That's our system of rock that cuts it off at the knees, kills it at the root, because youth is the lifeblood of rock music. California has contributed more to rock and roll music than any other state, than any other country, except England. California in and of itself is the most important rock and roll producer, and yet the conservatives have let this wonderful fountain of native innovation, cultural innovation, which is rock and roll, twist in the wind. The conservatives have abandoned rock bands, so that we have been subject to the ruling class of California, which is Jerry Brown, the Pat Brown dynasty, and the Democratic Party under the most vile, the most evil people imaginable. We, rock bands, have been under this dark Marxist-Leninist cloud of the Democratic Party in the state of California. And who's here to save us? Who's here to care for us? Who's here to protect us amongst the conservatives? If you are conservative, you are supposed to conserve your own country's culture. Do you deny that rock and roll is your country's culture? So the wage slavery problem and the student debt slavery problem are the other death daggers into the heart of rock and roll. How can you get an audience to come out and see you on a weeknight at your club gig when the wage slaves are too exhausted, too attached to their little succulent device that sucks the energy out of them and makes them so they don't have the energy to go out and see live music? And the debt slaves who are student debt ridden in their mom or dad's basement, can they go out and be in a band? Do they have the money, the wherewithal, the confidence? Or are they crushed? Where's their creativity? Where's their extra energy to be in a garage band and save the world with rock and roll again? To stick your head above the rampart and say, well, yeah, they assassinated every one of our leaders. So go on, try again. Speak the truth in rock and roll. Yes, I'm willing to get shot for it. Yes, I'm willing to have my head blown off or anything to speak the truth in rock and roll. Come at me. I am ready. I've made myself ready over 32 years of paying dues in this toxic, satanic, materialistic, butchered, assassinated, evil, mind-controlled rock and roll industry, where we were betrayed by the ones that survived and abandoned by the ones that were killed. Have you ever thought about what it takes to make an original rock band succeed in the economy of the last 20 years? Now, I don't even expect you to give a fuck. You are a rock and roll consumer. That's why I call you sleeping fans of rock. You've been conditioned to think that rock music is free and is worth nothing. It costs nothing. As of the internet age, the internet social media companies plus Napster and anybody else who colluded to make file sharing a normalized process without any etiquette, without any obligation to the content providers, the intellectual property holders, the rock and roll songwriters. Nobody had any interest in protecting them. When this social media, tax evading, fake parasitic digital download music industry killed the brick and mortar music industry. So Amazon got to sell music online without charging tax, while Rasputin's and Amoeba Records had to sell physical music and charge you tax, and therefore suffer a market disadvantage that nobody was regulating, no conservative could give a fuck about. Fake fucking conservatives. When it comes to rock, you are fakes. I'm the true conservative. Only the fucking hippie rockers who have paid dues to keep the flame alive for rock music, come what may, paying whatever price it took to keep art and beauty and rock music and this body of the divine masculine alive. To fuck you, Illuminati ego culture, till you are dead. You've tried to kill us all. You sleeping fans of rock. What these bands face in the last 3 generations is an endless litany of catch-22s. For example, there's these people talking about how to have 1,000 true fans. All these activities are suggesting cost you money and time and labor and the psychic space to be a self-promoter. And every band is expected to reinvent the wheel of self-promotion, marketing, because there is no infrastructure for rock bands. Or there's just barely enough in a few areas. So we have 1 hourly rehearsal studio in the East Bay that is not a shithole. And I don't even know if they're any others than the Soundwave Studio at this point. We're 1 business failure away from having no hourly practice space to speak of. And we just limp along, scraping along, thinking this is the best we can do. Rock and roll deserves to be at the lowest portion of the economy. It deserves to get no corporate welfare at all. Every other stinking fucking corporation in this world is bellied up to the trough of public taxpayer money and corporate welfare, gorging by the billions, even down to the local opera. But rock bands, who've made the biggest honest contribution to American culture, other than civil rights and free speech movements, other than the great civil rights movements, what have we done that wasn't hellishly evil? Rock and roll is the bestest, greatest, highest thing we've got that America has done. And that's why it has been thrown under the bus the most. So, you're supposed to get 1,000 true fans. You've got to do every form of self-exploitation that involves spending more money. For example, if you want to be a successful band, how are you going to get fans to come to your show? How are you going to get other local bands to recognize your worth? You are trying to survive economically with 1 or more day jobs. Maybe have a relationship or a family. Take care of the place that you live. And have the time to rehearse with a band, write songs, practice your instrument or your singing, make posters, t-shirts, and logos, CDs and websites, social media campaigns. You have to be everything and wear every hat that would otherwise be a division of labor in a healthy corporation or a healthy guild or union that would defend its members and help them cooperate for the furtherance and benefit of all its members. No such organization has ever supported rock bands. There's no rock band union. There's never been a union for rock bands. There's never been any help or support from any labor union movement. Any labor union organizers have seemingly found rock bands to be unorganizable, uninteresting, not even worth meeting with, talking to, or helping in any way. You union movements can suck my dick. You sold out so hard and so fast to the Illuminati so long ago, and you've been faking it, faking that you support workers' rights. You support your own little enclaves where you've already secured some kind of benefit or security for yourselves, and then you become a little tribe that only looks out for your self-interest, and anything beyond the scope of that is cultural baggage that can be thrown away. Rock bands have never gotten support from labor unions. Instead, the labor unions supported jazz music, jazz musicians, symphonic musicians, who, interestingly, got the only foothold in public schools. So here's another thing. When you're an artist in this Illuminati-based so-called free market, never was a free market if satanic pedophiles control your central bank and secret societies control everything else. You never had a free market. You've had this sick, disgusting Illuminati-controlled rock industry, and you let rock bands twist in the wind inside the most vile, evil, negative atmosphere, and then you expect us to open our hearts and our psyche to the muse and to conditions of the world around us so that we can make real, pure, true art like Pink Floyd, like John Lennon, like Bob Marley, like you expect us to do, and do that in an environment of mind control, rape, and assassination and absolute destruction of the rock band. And then you want to have all of your music for free and have your pleasure turned on by a device at the touch of a button so that you could turn us on like a utility, hot water, in your bathroom. But you have to pay for your water and your heat. But you get virtually every kind of music you want for free. And you don't care. You don't care. You have been conditioned to be a mindless, robotic, insincere, parasitic consumer. And you know deep inside that there are children being raped and eaten by these elites that control the music industry that you suck off of. And you know that the bands are being ground into hamburger and that this culture is being destroyed. You can, in several generations, effectively destroy a culture. Only YouTube is keeping it alive. And the recordings that still exist on a physical medium that can't be turned off at the turn of a button by somebody who controls the cloud. So you put all your hands and your trust into streaming media, and you've abdicated your physical media. You let them take away your physical media, just like you let them take away your guns. Yeah, they want your guns and they want your cassette player. Think about it. This is such a sprawling topic. I know, it just seems I'm nothing other than Adidas religion. Adidam gets me as angry as, well, and the condition of animals and the condition of children. It all goes together. The way Adidas is treated is the way farm animals are treated in industrial farming of animals, and the way children are treated in the abduction and the children gone missing to feed this satanic mill of this satanic pedophile cult known as the military religious industrial complex, the globalists, the New World Order. However mentally you can get a handle on the royal families of Europe and Asia's attempt to keep their special order and system in place. And you can't have this wild, free, ecstatic new religion called rock and roll taking your place, can you? But we're going to win. And you're going to lose. And you are losing. And when humanity wakes up enough to realize how much its own children and its own rock and roll culture have been raped and destroyed, they're going to come to our rescue like never before. End of part 2.